this is to introduce my model of the Crystal Palace. Now it's not the football team, it's the original Crystal Palace for the Great Exhibition of 1851, and it was built in Hyde Park. I've got two versions here, you'll see over on the right, and the version that was built in 1851 looked like this, and as you can see it's occupying most of the width of a standard grid in Trainz, because it is very big, and I've made it so that it is not translucent. The glazing is opaque and is designed there so as to conceal the contents of the Crystal Palace, because otherwise I would have to have modelled all of the interior structure, all of the very complex girders and transepts and galleries. It would have been an immense job to do. So there's the version that was built at Hyde Park, and an enormous building, as you can see, very long indeed, and it was built so that there was, as a glass house, so there was no need to cut down any of the trees in the park, so they were all preserved. And of course there's the apocryphal story of all of the sparrows and other small birds that were causing a nuisance because they were nesting in the trees and coming in and out of the Crystal Palace, and of course leaving their mark on a lot of visitors. And Queen Victoria is meant to have approached the Duke of Wellington and said, you know, what can we do about the sparrows? And he just replied rather laconically, "Sparrowhawks, ma'am." Well, if you've ever seen a sparrowhawk hunting, it's not a pleasant sight, so we'll just not try and think too much about that. So there we are, that's the Crystal Palace. It was opened in 1851 and it ran for most of that year, and it was designed by Joseph Paxton, the Duke of Devonshire's gardener, who had already been a pioneer in building large glass houses for his aristocratic client. And so when the original scheme was put together to have this big exhibition, this was a solution that was adopted because it meant that it was a light, airy, well lit building, so all the exhibits could be well seen, and there was quite a variety of exhibits of all sorts. And it also meant that although it used the country's entire glass production for several months, it was easy to assemble. It was all modular and easy to dismantle. And of course my favourite engineer, Isambard King of Brunel, was on the committee working with Paxton to design and create this incredible building. So there we are. If you want to have a real feature on your layout, a real Victorian feature, then go for this is the smaller version of the Crystal Palace, because after the exhibition, very successful exhibition of 1851 under the auspices of Prince Albert, when that was closed, they had so much money they were able to build the permanent museums in South Kensington, Victoria and Albert, and what's now the Science and Geology and whatever. And so if I just delete this, the building itself was sold, dismantled and sold, and it was sold to a company who took over, who bought land on a hill in southeast London at Sydenham, and there they used the original plus many other components, copying many other components, and built this much larger version of the Crystal Palace, the original 1851 Crystal Palace, on the site of on the top of Sydenham Hill. And this then was became a permanent exhibition centre in South London, Southeast London, and it had two stations. It had its own branch line run to it, and also there was another station, a high-level station, high and low-level stations, and the low-level station was on the, I forget which line it went through now, part of the Southeastern and Chatham Railway, something like that. But anyway, so this was even bigger, and down the hill they laid out terraces and parkland and created a what was then seen to be a real cutting edge display of painted concrete dinosaurs around the lakes and that sort of thing, to show what was known of these creatures back in Victorian times. But as I say, both of these are very big buildings indeed, as you can see, and they're very substantial. I mean, the doors, they give you an idea, those doors are about 10 foot high, and so there's lots of room. Now unfortunately, although this one became a very popular venue for all sorts of events, firework displays, exhibitions, concerts, in 1936, unfortunately, after frankly being run down a fair bit for a number of years, the building caught fire on the 30th, I think, of November, and burnt to the ground, and all that's left now is the base of the building, and I think one of the towers, the water towers that went with it, which I've yet to model. All of that was lost, and except for the park land and the terrace, the flat terrace, which now is very odd because you just go there and walk around this terrace where there's a building should have been, and of course Crystal Palace sports ground is down the bottom of the hill now, and of course the football team are named after it. So there we are. There's the Crystal Palace as it was rebuilt at Sydenham. So a massive structure if you fancy it in your layout. Not particularly big. I managed to save a lot of polys, a lot of repetition, but again a real Victorian feel for your layout. Just before finishing this video, I did notice that there was some flickering here, so there were two textures overlaying each other, so I've corrected that, so that's now a correct entrance. And actually this is 24 feet high each section, so those doors I thought were about 10 foot. I think they're nearer 16 feet high. They're really big. And I also noticed on the Sydenham version that I had a plane coming across here. You may have noticed that earlier on in the video. Well, I've eliminated that, I've corrected that, but otherwise I think I'm pretty much there. And so there we are, a couple of massive buildings. I like them both, I really do, and I think they'd be marvellous on any layout.